of people, it may block it. So, and then if the weather changes, it rains or snows, it may go away. Those are problems that are not easy to solve. As far as the distance that it transmits, CNET reported good coverage is really up to 300 feet from the base station. That means you need a base station every 600 feet. That's a lot of base stations. I don't see that happening anytime soon for a large part of the country, even a large part of cities. The phones use more power when they're using the millimeter wave band. And it's been reported that when the temperature's up in the 80s, they may switch over to 4G so they don't overheat. So you thought you were enjoying 5G and you're out in a sunny summer day, you might suddenly find you're on 4G. The base stations also use about 3 times the power of a 4G or LTE station. So they're not as green. Some people are concerned about that. And health effects. There have been concerns about the health effects of cellular communication since cell phones were invented. There's been a lot of studies. The issue hasn't gone away. And with millimeter wave signals, the issue is higher. So you can expect there are going to be concerns about this. And finally, even interference with weather satellites. The weather satellites are picking up signals in the same band that the phones are using, and they're very small signals. The phones will overwhelm the signals that they're picking up. So it could actually affect our weather forecasts. Okay, so now let's focus on IoT, the massive machine type communication. This is the IoT group, so this should be very interesting. We're talking about service that is covering, low power devices covering a wide area where you need long battery life. And you can get 10-year battery life as long as you don't transmit too often. You're looking at very low data rates, bits per second, not megabits per second. But you may have millions of devices in a small area. And the latency is unimportant. But what's important is cost. It has to be very low cost. So currently, 5G doesn't provide anything for this area. There's nothing that's better than 4G. They're working on standards for 5G to provide IoT capability. 5G is, as it is now, is not optimized for packet size or short sessions. So for example, it takes 100 bytes of signaling to transmit 10 bytes of data. That's not really good efficiency if you're trying to do it at low power. The 10-year battery life, you can get that as long as you don't send very often. But if you're sending data all the time, just like today, you can't get there. And there isn't any magic that's been created that can get you more data at a longer distance in a shorter time for less power. You've got to give up on something. Now, the existing IoT service actually has some interesting changes. You may have started hearing about NB-IoT and LTE-M. These have been around for years. They're part of 4G. But only in the last couple of years has it become widespread enough in the United States that you can actually build a device and it'll work almost everywhere. So these are actually new because now they're actually available. They have some issues with data packets as well, not so efficient, but they work fine. You can have 50,000 devices in one cell tower area. Well, 50,000 is a lot less than 1 million, but that's really good for today. We don't often have more than 50,000 IoT devices in a small area. In the future, we may. And they've promised us that NB-IoT and LTE-M will coexist with 5G. Well, they do now, and they promise that they will in the future. So as long as that doesn't change, this is not going away anytime soon. There are also non-cellular services that can be used. Zigbee, LoRa, Ingenue, and others. They used unlicensed spectrum. Their availability as a public network is very limited, and I'll show you that a little bit more. So what I see as the really big area for change in the near future is the use of NB-IoT and LTE-M so that you can send data from an IoT device directly to the internet, not to a phone and to an internet, not using Wi-Fi to a hotspot, but directly to a cell tower. So NB-IoT and LTE-M coverage in the US, Verizon announced 2 years ago that they could reach 92% of the US population, and it's only gotten better. So that's getting close to what cellular can do. Even cellular doesn't reach everybody. NB-IoT is more widespread than LTE-M, but in Mexico, it's limited. Both of these are unavailable in most of Africa and parts of South America and Asia. NB-IoT has some limitations when the device moves, so a wearable device may have an issue, or if it's in a vehicle. And there's always some, when there's a compatibility issue, there's some concern about how long that will last, but I think it's going to be fine for a long time. So just to give you an idea, take a look at the countries where you can get NB-IoT or LTE-M. The gray areas have neither. It's, it's not the major countries, but significant areas. And the blue has only NB-IoT. It includes India and China. That's a large part of the population. And then you can see Mexico has only LTE-M. Now, this is changing. So, and this data here is November of 2020. It's getting a little old. So things are changing. And it's hard to get updates on this regularly. And then if you look at the United States, you notice that just because a country has that capability, it doesn't mean that everybody in the country has it, even in the US. This is what T-Mobile reported in just a couple of months ago, the availability of NB-IoT in the US. Now, they're saying they get more than 90% of the population because they're obviously serving the populated areas, but you go outside of the populated areas and some places you won't have coverage. But by comparison, here's LoRa. LoRa gets a very small percentage of the population. And so as a public network, it's not so good, not by comparison. So let's compare these. This table shows you LTE-M and NB-IoT, as well as Sigfox and LoRa. And I've got Bluetooth LE Mesh and Zigbee over on the right, only as a comparison. They're very short distance. They go meters, not kilometers. There's a delay.
There it is. We weren't able to see your table.
Can you see it now?
We sure can.
Okay. So Bluetooth LE Mesh and Zigbee are there only as a comparison. They're used for short distances. So if you take a look first at LTE-M and range, well, all of them have a high range. But the data rate, LTE-M at 1 megabit per second, take that with a grain of salt. At that speed, it's not low power. And these are designed and they really shine at low power, at low data rates. So Sigfox at 300 bits per second, that's nothing to write home about, but for most applications, that's plenty. You don't want to use these at high rates. I've talked about public and private. A public network, I'll talk about it a bit more, but that's like the cellular. A private network is one you set up yourself. LoRa has the advantage that it can do either one. And availability as a public network, that's where LTE-M and NB-IoT really shine. So a private network, you set up both devices, the transmitter and receiver, or since they both transmit and receive, you set up the gateway and the device. There's a cost to set that up, but there's no cost after that. There's no monthly fee. It uses unlicensed spectrum. You can install it anywhere. So if you want to put LoRa into a factory, you may put in one hub and it'll serve the factory. And it costs a few $100s. So LoRa has some really good advantages in a case like that. A public network is provided by the owner of the network, the phone companies in this case. It only works where they installed those base stations, but you don't have to install any base stations and you can easily roam from one to the other. It is licensed spectrum, and there's a monthly charge. So now let's talk about comparing the speed, the power, and the distance of many different capabilities for IoT wireless transmission, particularly the LPWAN, low power WAN. If you look in the upper left on this chart, you can see Bluetooth LE4 or Zigbee and Bluetooth LE mesh at much less than a milliwatt. These numbers are all in milliwatts. They are by far the lowest power, but they don't go very fast. They don't handle 40 kilobits per second, for example. They don't go very far. They don't handle 50 meters, let alone a kilometer. So they are used for transmitting to a cell phone typically. Now you look at LoRa and Sigfox, NB-IoT, LTE-M, when you're at a short distance and low data rates, the power is not a whole lot more than Bluetooth LE. But the advantage is they can go a long distance. So you can go at a kilometer. Now they're up to 20 milliwatts down at the bottom. You have to pay a penalty to go further, but that's not bad, 20 milliwatts. If you compare that to LTE-M, which is 4G, we're looking at 100 milliwatts to 500 milliwatts, though there the speed is much higher. You can transmit video. And then you can see as you get up higher in speed, take a look at 50 meters at 40 kilobits per second. NB-IoT can do that, but it's the same power as cellular. So there's no advantage. If you need to do it now and then, and most of the time you don't, maybe there's a use for it. Let's look at cost. There's the cost of the module that you put in the device. Now these, unfortunately, are 3 years old. It's hard to get updates on this information. But for LTE-M and NB-IoT, at $10 or $15 per module, that's pretty expensive. That's 10 times as much as Bluetooth LE. But these prices are coming down. Hopefully they'll come down much further. LoRa and Sigfox are less. Now, infrastructure, if you're on a public network, there is no cost of infrastructure. And for LoRa, putting in one base station, $300, not bad. And then there's a cost for connectivity if you're on a public network. For this type of network, it's typically under $1 a month. And this was dropping fast, so I expect it's a lot less than this today. But you can see in some cases, it's like 15 cents a month. And then let's talk about availability. So, and now I'm talking about availability of the public network for 5G for the cell phone use case. There are 4 carriers in the US deploying 5G. Of course, you need a 5G phone or 5G device to use it. And as I mentioned, little coverage in rural areas, even in cities, it's limited. And some of the carriers are putting in 5G, but not the millimeter wave, so you don't get the high speed. So here are the 4 carriers, and you can see they're putting in most of them are putting in a combination of the low and mid band and the high band, the millimeter wave. US Cellular is only the low band. So in the 600 megahertz band, you'll hardly notice the difference between 4G and 5G. So not terribly exciting. You know, it's going to be twice the speed, perhaps. Significant, but you could miss that difference. Now let's take a look at where. Oh, okay.
Deval, we wanted to thank you first for presenting this talk. What are your thoughts on the company Airvine, A-I-R-V-I-N-E, solving some of the issues you pointed out with 5G, especially the indoor issues?
Unfortunately, I'm not familiar with Airvine.
And then,
but if they're creating picocells, then they're going to solve some of those issues.
And he also further mentioned Airvine is a fast-growing Silicon Valley innovator of advanced high-capacity wireless solutions, and the company has developed the industry's first indoor 60 gigahertz wireless system that exceeds the speed and rivals the reliability of existing cabling at a fraction of the deployment time and cost. Patented RF innovations extend the range and gain of wireless signals, penetrating walls and steering around obstacles that impede transmission, something never before possible with the 60 gig.
Okay, so I hope everybody heard that. It sounds like what they're doing is picocells. But if I learn more about it, I'll be sure and share this with people if it's something different. Was there another question? Rio, was there another question?
Not yet.
Okay.
I have a question on the,
Yes.
The LoRa, when talking about 300 for the base station, how many simultaneous clients do the systems will have for this 300 dollars?
I don't know. So the question is, how many simultaneous devices can connect in LoRa to one base station? And unfortunately, I don't have that answer. It's typically not a big problem because the devices are transmitting very infrequently. So, you know, if they transmit once a minute, within that minute, a lot of devices can send data. Okay, so let's look at Verizon. In California, they've got a number of cities, but that means the other cities not mentioned here don't yet have it. Now, this is June. This is changing every day. But even, keep in mind, even in these cities, it's not everywhere. I'm sure not all of Los Angeles is covered. There's a lot of suburban areas in Los Angeles and in San Jose. There are 64 other cities in the US with 5G. Now, this is just the ultra wideband. This is the millimeter wave. There are other places within the country that Verizon is serving with 5G, but these are the ones with millimeter wave where you get the really high speeds. T-Mobile, just 6 cities. And I looked at a map showing Manhattan, New York, and even there, it's not completely covered. So in our densest urban area, you don't have complete coverage with 5G millimeter wave. AT&T covers a good part of the cities in California, a modest amount, particularly in Northern California, for those of us here in Northern California, and then 20 other cities. So let's take a look at the coverage map. This is showing 4G in dark blue and 5G in light blue. So there's a big difference between the coverage. Now we're talking about not just millimeter wave, but all the bands. When you're in the rural areas, you can be sure it's the lower bands. And even there, we don't have everything covered like 4G, but given time, it'll get there. And even 4G has some significant gaps in the mountainous areas and in Alaska especially. So with all of this, when you're selecting the capabilities that you need for wireless communication, be sure you map your technical and commercial requirements against the actual available technical requirements and capabilities. There are a lot of technologies with varying capabilities, varying costs and availability. This is something Voler can help you with. This is what we do, is design IoT and wearable devices. Thank you for your time today with this session. And now I can take some more questions.
You mentioned the 5G is more secure than 4G. In what terms and how is it more secure?
So the question is, how is 5G more secure than 4G? Unfortunately, I haven't seen details on that. Some of this stuff, they don't give you a lot of details. It's been hard to pull it out. I've had trouble getting up-to-date information on coverage. Sometimes I get it it's a year old and I can't compare it to something today. So sorry, some of it's difficult to find.
We have Deval. Deval, would you like to ask your questions on air? Are you able to feel comfortable to do that? The typed question from Deval is, and 4G is everywhere, 5G is, correct?
I believe that anywhere that you can get 5G, you also get 4G. I haven't heard of any place where you can't. If you look at the map, that's pretty much the case. We was checking for other questions here.
I have a question.
Yes.
When you talk about LoRa, and you say, well, you can buy a hub, like a base station, right?
Yeah.
So that's for local situation. But I think what's available also is that you can get LoRa services from service provider that has those base stations as a service.
Yeah, so the questions about LoRa and basically about public and private.
So that's
Yes.
when you're talking about public and
Yes.
private, like the two options.
Yeah, LoRa is both public and private. So
Okay.
you can get it from a service provider. You can also put in your own network. And it's the only one of these services where you can do either one.
Okay.
So it's got a significant advantage there. Any other questions, Rio?
No.
Okay. Well, I'll wait just a minute to see if somebody has another question. And if you've got questions after this presentation, don't hesitate to send me an email. Let's see, I've got my email here on the screen, so I'm happy to receive emails from people. And I would enjoy answering your questions.
I'll put in.
Oh, yeah.
Possible to ask questions over Zoom. Let me help with unmuting my apologies.
Okay, someone wants to ask a question?
All right, Deval, my apologies. Are you able to hear us? Deval, are you able to hear us? You're unmuted now. Deval?
Deval, are you able to ask?
I can hear you. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Can you hear
go
me?
ahead, please.
Okay, great. Hi, Walt.
Hi.
We have met before. So just a follow up to that, in the map you had a dark blue and a light blue, right? And
Yes.
then you showed in light blue 4G, and then you showed, in one of the colors you showed 4G, and then in one of the colors you showed 5G. And the areas where 5G is, it doesn't show the color of 4G. So that's why the map is a bit confusing, because your assumption is that the whole 5G is overlaid on top of 4, in the picture. So that's why you can say confidently that wherever there's a 5G, there's a 4G. Because if someone looks at the picture, they will think the areas where there's one color, it's 4G, the other color is 5G. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's not true. If you look at it, the first places you're getting 5G is in the cities. And the cities all have 4G. So
Okay.
by and large, you get both. And today you can get both. Eventually 4G will go away, just like 2G has gone away.
Right, right.
Not for quite a while.
Mhm. Does the 5G infrastructure piggyback on top of the actual hardware? Like, does it sit on the same stations, like the same towers, or it can be mutually exclusive?
I believe they're putting it at the same locations, because in a lot of cases, it's hard to find a location to put it. You have to get approval, and you have to get your neighbors to allow it. It's
Right.
different equipment, different antennas, different equipment. So it's not using the same equipment.
Okay, got it. Thank you very much. I'm done. Yep,
Okay.
thanks.
Thanks for your question.
Sure.
Go ahead.
One of our members in the audience says, thanks, Walt, for the great presentation. Regarding power consumption, which other technology is your analysis showing similar data as NB-IoT? And how might be the data rate different?
Okay, so the question is about the power for some things other than NB-IoT or LTE-M. And I think this chart covers it, but if there's a question about this chart, I'm happy to fill in some more. You can see that as far as a long distance, more than a kilometer, LoRa, Sigfox, LTE-M, and NB-IoT are the only way to go. Well, of course, you can use cellular. Cellular works fine at low data rates and high data rates. But as far as the power, NB-IoT, LTE-M are the best, along with LoRa. Sigfox, I haven't talked about much. The availability in the US is very small, and it's public only, so it's not very useful unless you happen to be in the right spot. Needs to be covered?
Thank you. That was the last question that has.
Actually, can I ask one more thing?
Yes, go ahead.
What is your vision? Like, what is, you understand it so well, all these things. How many years, like, what's your feeling about next 5, 10, 20 years? What's going to change?
Oh.
Like,
well, first thing I'll say is I'm having trouble forecasting a month in the future during this pandemic. I couldn't see it coming, and a lot of people couldn't. So 20 years in the future, I don't know. But they're already working on 6G. So the next one's in development, but it'll be a long time before they actually are putting out 6G stations, because 5G is still new. And I don't know what 6G will present. So I expect that what we're going to see for the next several years is more and more availability of 5G. I'm expecting that some of the issues with 5G will become smaller, partly because there'll be more base stations, partly because companies are going to come up with solutions, and maybe some that I can't think of. You know, I do get surprised sometimes by what people come out with. So I can expect that 5G will get better and better.
right. And since you broached the topic of 6G, of course, I mean, we are not going there really, but at a very high level, 6G, the main reason would be the bandwidth increase. That would be the rationale for people already thinking about 6G, or is it about power?
Well, as you can see, all these increased capabilities have made power worse, not better.
Okay.
I'm not sure what 6G is going to present. You know, if you want to get even higher speeds and higher bands, the distances are going to be even shorter. So that becomes impractical. We're approaching physical limits in a lot of directions.
Okay, thank you. And by the way, this presentation will be available for viewing later.
Yes.
The video and the slides.
That's correct.
Okay, thank
And
you.
we'll let everybody know when they're available.
Okay. And how many were attending in live, and how, I mean, like, most of the people are live or on Zoom?
Most of the people are virtual.
Okay.
I'm discovering that people aren't quite ready. Most people aren't ready to do meetings in person yet.
Maybe had you mentioned pizza, more would show up.
Okay, sorry, we didn't mention pizza. We didn't provide anything today.
Thank you, Walt.
He only came to the pizza. So the question is, what's your thought or opinion regarding low orbiting satellite substations? And do you see that is a possibility in the near future?
Okay, so the question is about low Earth orbiting stations used for cellular service or other wireless communication. There's one thing to keep in mind about even low Earth orbit. That's 100 miles away. A cell tower 100 miles away means you need a big antenna, a lot of power. It's not the same as what we're doing on the Earth with cellular technology, where it's just a few miles away. So it can be very useful in some locations in rural areas, and maybe it'll solve some issues with 5G in rural areas. But it has some issues. It's going to be different equipment. It's going to be different antennas, different batteries, and so on. So, and then they're also doing blimps. You can put blimps up at a much lower height, so that may be a better solution. However, if we have a blimp every 600 feet all the way across the country, I can't see that happening. Blimps are about 600 feet across.
Thank you to everybody. Well, do you
can I ask another question?
Go ahead.
You talked about blimps that made me think about the Google balloon, that balloon experiment. Do you
Yes.
share anything about that? Well, it failed, right? They closed it down, the X.
Huh.
So what's with respect to that? And then I might as well ask another one, which is about Starlink. What are your thoughts on Starlink with Elon Musk and SpaceX?
So I'm not sure quite why they shut down what Google was doing, but to cover large areas with balloons or blimps takes an awful lot of them, and keeping them from interfering with air traffic. There's some significant issues there. With Starlink, I'm not up to speed on what Elon Musk is doing. Sorry.
Is there
No problem. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Walt. Everyone who is online and in person, Voler Systems is so grateful to your interest and your participation with the 5G talk, Hype versus Reality by Walt Maclay. As we mentioned, this is being recorded. It's being streamed live right now on YouTube, but we will have a formal recording and also share the slides. It's always a great honor to be here and help the community. Your feedback makes it what it matters most to us. So keep the questions coming.
Now, what I'd like to do is have an opportunity for some networking. Since we've got a small group online and here in the room, I'd like people to take advantage of that. And keep in mind that networking is a really important thing to do. If you lose your job, where's the first place you go? You go to your network, who you know. There are 3/4 of jobs never appear on anywhere except through a network. So, and networking is a great way to do business. So for that, what I'd like to do is give people the opportunity online to unmute themselves and introduce themselves. And then hopefully we can do that in the room. Rio, do we have the microphone set up? Okay. Unfortunately, we didn't get in the room early enough to set up the microphone and camera. So I don't know how well we'll do this, but maybe everybody can go over and use your computer. But for starters, let's see, Carl introduced himself at the beginning. Duval, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi. My name is Dhaval. I live in the Bay Area, and I'm working in a machine learning AI startup in a couple of verticals. I've known Walt, I think, since at least Walt. I mean, we've not met recently, but we met first around 10 years back.
I couldn't remember.
I have emails between us in 2011. I was looking today, just before this talk. So we met at the IoT stuff. I think at Plug and Play, right, and stuff, and also for the Google developer, where I was a volunteer, and you had come over. I think in Sunnyvale, at the Google campus for the GDG.
You have a good memory.
Yeah. So I'll follow up with you more. And hello, everyone. Yeah. And how many total people are there, Walt?
Rio, how many total people do we have?
We have 2 in the audience.
And how many virtual?
Virtual, we have 16, we're down to 11.
Okay, so we had a total of 18. Not everybody's here for the networking.
Wonderful. All right, thank you.
Emily, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Walt. I always enjoy your presentations. And of course, you and I go way back. We started when I was a teenager at Intel.
Oh yeah.
and now I'm retired in SoCal, but still thinking of you. So I will attend online.
And all that time I've been 40 years old.
But you've always been the leader. And I even share your information in your slides with Europeans, because I am working right now with the Open Voice Network. We're looking at privacy ethics. And of course, there's a lot of voice stuff really exploding in Europe, and they're looking at, IoT and other solutions. And you know me, I'm always looking for the next fire to put out in healthcare and wellness. So with the ransomware things, and my connections with Telesecure, I learned all the evils of healthcare, ransomware and all this. So the hospitals are and the insurance companies that own the hospitals are looking to spend big money on tech and infrastructure. And of course, our illustrious governments now are passing large dollars. And I'm hoping that they'll listen to some of the things that you and folks in the audience are bringing up and not just make, hard, fast decisions on how to build a broadband infrastructure that's going to implode. And to me, healthcare is the most important, not just with COVID, but other health issues that arise with global warming and water shortages and air quality. So here in Santa Cruz, we enjoy pretty nice clean air, and we'd like to keep it that way. And also we are in a, very rural kind of community area. So all the lovely bandwidth that I had in San Mateo, I'm sitting sucking through a straw here. So I miss it.
Well, thank you, Emily.
But I do want to let you folks know that I am a clinical researcher and regulatory affairs person, and I am looking at the infrastructure as it occurs to be used with voice interactions of devices and healthcare. So if anyone has any questions, you can find me. It's Emily Troutner on LinkedIn. Let's talk. I would love to learn about your new companies, share them with the voices that I have here in the US and also in Europe and Asia. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. So you can, to connect with someone after these introductions, you can find them on Meetup. We'll also try and make them available to the people who have attended. So I want to encourage networking and help people do it. Anna T, would you like to go next?
Yeah, Walt, I had a quick joke. The joke I had is, I know you 10 years back. Emily knows you since being a child, and maybe the next person knows you since your past birth.
Yeah. Very good. Anna, go ahead, introduce yourself.
Yeah, I know. So I have to say how I know what, right? From some of these wearable events, not that long ago, because I actually started to come to these meetups, and in the last few years, before that, I was used to work on not 5G, never worked on 5G, and I was working on 4G devices. With the device vendor operator, and also spend quite a bit of time in the standards since 3G time frame. So that's been a long time ago, and now my focus is in healthcare, mainly in mobile health applications. And saying about applications, I'm feeling a little bit disservice to this kind of project, but I do think having worked in the technology side, like 4G or standards, now trying to really think about how to help people to solve healthcare problem, it's actually quite different. Yeah, so I think I'm used to imagine the problem from the technical side, but when we really speak to people to understand the problems, and they are actually quite different. So I'm actually taking this step to do it and really understand the problem a bit more. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is it Kelger? I hope I'm pronouncing your name right.
That's me.
Oh, that's you. And I know you. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. You can use Rio's computer and talk to everybody. Oh, yeah, come up here and talk here. We have a long delay on Rio's computer. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Jerome. I was hoping to get the pizza today and or the beer, so I'm very disappointed. But I'm glad that's my first meetup in person. So after all the Zooms meetings, that's refreshing. I'm a technologist, long time in the Silicon Valley, 30 years, originally from France. And I interested in all things IoT, real-time communication, sensors. I'm an advisor of a few companies based in Europe that deals with real-time communication, video conferencing, and different sensors.
Good.
And thanks for the presentation, Walt.
You're welcome. And Manoj, would you like to go next? If you'd like to go, you'll need to unmute yourself. If you prefer not to, that's fine, but I'll give you a moment. Okay, we can go on. Jignesh, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, this is Jignesh Suratia. I'm part of a company called c4etech Networks. I work there as a head of 5G networks and solutions. The topic looked interesting to me in terms of 5G hype versus reality, and I'm here to find out the real pain points and problems which we may solve with or within 5G networks. So it was interesting to hear you. And IoT is an interesting topic, which has a lot of mixed views around the world of its success, and cellularity is my kind of interest. So glad to be here.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we've got everybody online. Would you like to come up and introduce yourself?
Absolutely.
Hello, everyone. My name is Vipul. I'm currently, very early in researching and understanding IoT and its applications. I'm really interested in smart homes and how IoT can be implemented in homes in terms of energy efficiency and also how it grows. I did post my LinkedIn earlier. I'm not sure if everybody can see it, but if anybody would like to collaborate on a project, in an IoT project or in terms of smart homes, please feel free to contact me on LinkedIn and we can absolutely talk more. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think we got everybody. Okay, we got everybody who's still on. Thank you, and we'll make sure you can connect. If for some reason you can't connect to somebody, you're welcome to send me an email. There's my email address. So thank you very much for attending. We'll see you at the next meeting.
Thank you. Good evening.
Yeah.
Well done, folks.
Okay, so I stopped sharing.